Hello, everyone. Oh, wait, I have to run this stinger. Run the stinger. Okay, now we can really start. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of TNE Recaps. I'm joined, of course, by April LaJoy and also Andrew Whitehead. Andrew, it's so good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you, too.
So I know that over the past few weeks, we've actually gained a lot of new listeners and a lot of new people who now watch us on YouTube. So friends, for a long time, Andrew was stopping in once a month to give us kind of the academic and the sociological perspective on Christian nationalism. And then when we switched to this new format, we had some scheduling conflicts. So I'm happy to see Andrew back on. He'll be joining us this episode, obviously, and also at the end of the month, and then going forward at the end of every month there and after. Is that the right way of saying that? Henceforth. Cool. Andrew, you are an author. You're a sociologist. We've connected a long time ago and have really stayed in touch. Why don't you go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I am a sociologist. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, teach at Indiana University there in the city. And I study Christian nationalism, have for, it's over a decade now. And connected a lot of great people that are doing that work. And so, yeah, really excited to be with Tim and April and hopefully help bring a little bit of what we know kind of with Christian nationalism as we study it and connecting it to what we see all around us, because
yes,
it's everywhere. And
it's like the Holy Spirit. It's everywhere you
go. Yeah, it really is. There's always more than enough to cover. So, yeah.
That
too
is
much.
True. Yes, too much. And also, you did write a book. Look at that, April. You see that transition?
I love
here.
that cover.
Yeah, I love it too. Can I get this thing in focus, though? There we go. American Idolatry, How Christian Nationalism Betrays the Gospel and Threatens the Church. It's a great read, friends. Andrew, you've been on the podcast as a guest many times. Yeah. So if people want to hear you unpack more about Christian nationalism, what's in the book, they can go to one of our podcast episodes, etc., and find it. But really briefly, just for the sake of this conversation today, and don't worry, all of you, usual listeners, we'll get into the banter and the humor, that's happening. But before we do, can you just kind of give us a working definition of Christian nationalism so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, definitely. So the definition of Christian nationalism, as we study it and provide empirical support for it, is that it's a desire to see a very particular expression of Christianity fused with American civic life, right? So it believes that this particular expression of Christianity should be the principal and undisputed cultural framework guiding civic life in America. And it wants to see the government vigorously defend and preserve that cultural framework. And so I can talk more about it, but that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Christian nationalism.
Perfect. Now, one more very important question. In your empirical research, what is the overlap of, you have this thing of Christian nationalists, rejectors, sympathizers, skeptics? Sorry, I got it. So you have rejectors, skeptics, sympathizers, and adherents, right? And obviously the names are kind of self-explanatory, people who would be in one of those categories, either reject or adhere to it. When it comes to blueberry coffee, though, what's the ratio of Christian nationalists who would find blueberry coffee from 7-Eleven, premium roast, acceptable or low on the bar? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thing that I can always fall back on is if I don't have data, then I don't have to talk about it. And I don't have data on that.
I think, though, it's got blue in the name. And that's the Democrat color.
You're right.
True.
That's true. Empirical evidence. There it is.
Yeah,
see?
There it is.
This is how you do sociology.
I like that.
Well, you know what? I will have TNE personally pay for a study on that so we can get the evidence and we'll take care of it. Yeah.
The important things.
We'll call up Robbie from the PRI Institute and have him and his team facilitate a study on the overlap of blueberry coffee and Christian nationalism, skepticism, or adherence.
That sounds great. I'll see him next week. I'll bring it up.
Yeah, please do. Put a good word in for me, Andrew. Okay, so the first thing we wanted to do today is I wanted to have, Andrew has not yet seen this music video called The Chosen One. Now, if you follow TNE, if you listened to last week's or Wednesday's episode, I played a clip of this at the end, and I also posted on Instagram. Andrew, though, has not yet seen this. So let me just set the stage, and we'll just give you a blind react for a few minutes here. This came out about 14 hours after the Trump verdict. So obviously, we know Trump is now a convicted felon, found guilty by a jury of his peers. And Natasha Owens is a Christian music artist, and she is very much in the MAGA world. And so she wrote this song. I'll put captions on too. That way we can definitely read the lyrics. I'll let this play for a little bit, and we'll just get your response to it. Here we go. This is not satire. This is real.
I'm not saying he's something divine. He gets in trouble bigly time after time. He's controversial, but one thing is true. Imperfect people, a perfect God can use. I'm standing with the chosen one.
I am the chosen one.
Ain't no stopping what the Lord's begun. He's only human like you and me. Just a chosen one.
Somebody had to do it.
Chosen one.
The lyric and the music are so
Oh yeah,
bad.
verse 2's even better.
Is under attack, and its real leader has arrows in his back. So many greet him with a Judas kiss. God gave us a warrior for such a time as this.
All right, there you go.
It's like Christian nationalism, the musical.
I can't do it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's for real, man. That is a real video. How many views does it have? Let's take a look. It currently has 45,000 views in 2 days. Here's some of the comments.
I do think
Okay.
most of them are.
Oh, this is a good
troll
one. He is definitely the chosen one. He was chosen 34 times.
Yeah, there
That's
you go.
funny. But there are some people who are like this. I saw some of the early comments. I guess that they're kind of buried. But many were like, no, this is great. He really is the chosen one. But yeah, now they're kind of ratioed. But there you go.
You're a musician. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
though, that music was just so bad, right? Like, I mean, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for CCM, it had a decent hook. Like, okay, like, you know, it was fine. But yeah, the banjo thing, it very much was not trying to appeal to me or April or you. It was trying to appeal to, you know, the average soccer mom for Caleb or something. You know?
Unfortunately, though, it's catchy. It's been stuck in my head.
I know, me too. I'm doing the dishes and I'm like, I'm standing up. Why am I doing this? Now, April, can I tell people the joke I made to you on text? Am I allowed to say it?
Yeah, you're allowed. It's fair.
Okay. So April, friends, if you don't know this, actually, April, why don't you kind of just share your experience of Christian nationalism as a child and what you did at one point in your life?
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome, April.
So one thing that I'm known for is being a former Christian nationalist growing up. I also wrote a Christian nationalist song called America Say Jesus.
You have a book coming out.
I do have a book coming out called
Here it
Star
is.
Spangled Jesus, which is an anti-Christian nationalism
Oh,
book.
it's upside down. There we go. That's better. Yeah.
Oh,
you guys see
Yeah,
that?
congrats.
that's
awesome.
helpful. Thank you.
Get in focus. Okay.
But yeah, one time I was unironically Christian nationalist, although I wouldn't have said that I was.
Right.
That's a whole other topic. But I wrote an original song called America Say Jesus. It had a line in it that was, "They're always on our necks, and I am downright sick of them demanding me to be politically correct." And then it goes into America Say Jesus. Anyway, I sang that on the Jim Bakker show.
No way.
Yeah, there's video. It's out there. I have not released the full cut because I'm afraid some people might take it and like it unironically.
That's funny.
Wow.
That's funny. So
Yeah.
You were in the like. The
I
core.
was in it. Yeah.
So my joke
I
to
was in
April was, April, this video is you if you never deconstructed.
I know. And I said, rude, Tim. Just humbling me unnecessarily.
Don't forget your roots.
Incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, happy Friday, friends. I mean, we gotta laugh somehow, and what better way? I mean, maybe while we're in the spirit of a jovial, attitude, because we're gonna get into more serious stuff in just a minute or two. maybe we could pull up some of these memes that were made about Trump's conviction that were shared, many of them by real, not just your aunt or uncle or mom or dad on Facebook, okay, but like real evangelical leaders with a lot of sway. So April picked a few of them, and we'll just kind of bring them up here on the screen, and we'll try and describe them for you listening to this on podcast. The first one is simple. It just says, "I can guarantee you that Judgment Day won't be rigged." And it's a neon lit up cross in a desert at night.
Yes, that makes sense.
And
Totally.
this was being shared. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. Good to know. Okay, I will keep going. Number 2. This one got me because this one was
hurts.
shared. Yeah, and I did talk about this on Wednesday's episode. This was shared by Eric Metaxas. It says, if you're not sure you can vote for a convicted criminal, remember, you worship one. And on the left, it's Trump's mugshot. And on the right, it's a picture of very white Jesus being crucified. Actually, maybe, Andrew, this is a good time to ask you on the data. Is there any, I mean, maybe it's not data, maybe it's just what you've seen as well, but I have seen a move to compare Trump to some kind of Messiah figure, in this case, Jesus, more often than not in the past couple months. Like, I've seen a real ramp up of this. Have you noticed the same trend? Is there any data on this that you're aware of? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any data on it for sure, but I think, just kind of trusting anecdotally, like what we're seeing with our own eyes.
Yeah.
During his time in office, and then even in the years since, it really was comparing him to other biblical figures, but
Right.
comparing him to Jesus was kind of that like outer edge where it's like, okay, maybe we won't go that far. But once that happens it kind of, it moves the Overton window, right? It just kind of shifts, and now people are like, oh yeah, no, we can totally start to do this more and more. So I think the ramp up definitely makes sense. But the first time, I don't remember the first time I started seeing it, but it was years ago, right? When somebody would compare him to Jesus or a Messiah, maybe not mention Jesus explicitly, but some sort of a Messiah, right?
Yeah.
Just like David, just like others who saved God's people. But now, I think the ramp up has definitely begun.
Do either of you think, because of obviously in the Christian tradition we see Jesus as our Messiah, but Jesus is not here embodied with us right now, do you think that it's kind of a normal human thing to look for embodied items, whether it's a statue or a person, to kind of map on their hope onto, and that's why this correlation is happening more and more for evangelicals? I'm really speculating here, but I've been trying to think about how Christians who taught me about the sacredness of the Christian faith and not being idolatrous, right, and worshiping Jesus and nothing else or no one else, are suddenly making these comparisons, and that's my best guess. I'm not sure if there's like a sociological phenomenon that can happen with humans doing this, but it just seems like we're witnessing something like that, in my opinion.
I was going to say that I do think there is this, whenever I see the most Trump Jesus comparisons, it's right around when either he's being charged, like for Easter, I think last year, Marjorie Taylor Greene compared him to Jesus because the charges had just come out. I don't even remember which trial it was. It was one of them. Right. And in the election in 2020, when he first lost, I saw a ton of, a lady I knew from my old church had posted, like, just remember they thought it was over when they nailed Jesus to the cross. This is far from over. Go Trump. I do think they seem to ramp up when Trump, from an outside perspective, is losing. He loses the election. He's getting charged criminally. He's convicted. That's when they kind of seem to ramp up. And I think it's twofold. I think it's one, like, oh, well, we worship Jesus. Jesus rises again. There's a happy ending there. And so if you compare him to that, I think maybe it makes them feel better about it. But that's when I've seen it ramped up. But it's been happening for years, because you've had Trump prophets since even before 2016.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a part of it within the Christian faith, or the spaces that we kind of grew up in, where you're constantly trying to reflect Jesus, right? And you're kind of taught and shown that's a big part of it, is that we're Jesus' hands and feet here on earth, and your life should kind of follow his. And so you need to sacrifice and do all these other things. And so, even with this meme that we're showing here, it isn't as though they're necessarily saying that like Trump is the Messiah, but again, just saying it's a likeness, right? And we're kind of taught growing up that you're supposed to reflect Jesus in everything you do. And so, yeah, I think just like April said, more and more it's kind of trying to tap into these narratives in the faith to kind of make sense of what's happening around us. And they're primed to do that over and over.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really good insight. Here's another one. There's a few more. This is Trump draped in an American flag, holding the world on his shoulders, and
he's got the whole world in his hands.
He really does.
Is that
missed opportunity?
Is that one of those Jim Naughton ones? Do you know him, the artist?
I don't know who he is.
He's a Mormon artist. I should have prepped this off air. I'm sorry, but
oh, it's fine.
He's the guy that, I mean, it has this kind of look, all his paintings, but he's the one that has like Trump around a card playing table with like Abraham Lincoln and, you know, all these other presidents just kind of hanging out. And he does it over and over. And so this one kind of looks like his. I was wondering if it was, but yeah.
Okay, maybe, I can't find anything on that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone had AI do it in the style of James Naughton. That's also possible now, right?
Yeah.
So
I wonder narratively, where is Trump? What
right
is
now?
he on a different planet? Like in this painting, he's holding
true.
Earth in his hands.
Yeah.
Where is he?
The multiverse, right?
He's in heaven with Jesus. Yeah. Okay, we'll do one or two more here. Oh, this is a good one. April, why don't you describe this one to the audience?
Okay, so you have four kind of squares here. The top left is Trump's mugshot. And then on the right, it says Daniel. It's a picture of, I'm assuming, Daniel in the lion's den. On the bottom, you have Jesus being arrested. And on the bottom left, you have the Apostle Paul. And the caption says, all four men were convicted of crimes they did not commit by jealous and corrupt enemies.
Yeah. Andrew, let me ask you a question. In your estimation, what is... I mean, here's how I see this whole Trump conviction thing. Obviously, there was a grand jury that indicted. So they said, hey, there's enough evidence here for a trial. Then there was a full trial with a defense and with a prosecutor, and they both picked their jurors, and they presented evidence, and they had witness testimony, and there was a judge. Trump maybe arguably, especially for given who he is in his wealth, had the trial of all trials. Like, he was given every opportunity to have every benefit of the doubt given to him, and a jury of his peers found him guilty on 34 felonies. Now, we would all agree that the justice system in America is far from perfect. We know that. It has major flaws, major. But the courts are one of the last places in America to really get a sense of true justice, even with all of its flaws. Yet, despite all of that evidence, and despite a jury being in that room and doing this, so many Christians and evangelicals are just saying things like like we just talked about.
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? Because to me, it seems like it's a real attempt to cast so much doubt on the judicial process, which is weird because this seems to be the party of law and order. So is it really about law and order for them, or is there something deeper going on? Like, what can you tell us in your research and tracking this for as long as you have been?
Yeah, definitely. No, there's a lot there, and I think it really isn't about law and order. But when we're talking about Christian nationalism, again, it's this idea of privileging a particular expression of Christianity in the public sphere, have the government defend, support that at every turn. And so these cultural elements that get added into it, right? So when we're saying Christian and Christian nationalism, it isn't just these like historic beliefs about the Christian faith, but also these cultural elements, which one I'll talk about later, but another one is a comfort with authoritarian social control. Yeah. And so a part of that is we want to get this country to look a certain way, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And so if that means setting aside democracy or the rule of law or trust in our systems, our institutions, that's fine, right? And so if there's a person like Trump who, through the threat of violence or through violence, is promising to take us to this place, then we'll set aside everything else. And so I think that's the underlying desire, is we want to see a particular outcome. And, one of the foundational points of a pluralistic democratic society is that we share power and we play by the same rules. And right, our opposing groups have the right to exist, and we differ, we have to compromise. But within this kind of information ecosystem, within this kind of ideology, that is out the window, right? It isn't about living around folks that see it differently. They might be able to just exist as long as they don't change anything for the in-group.
Right.
So when it comes to Trump or juries or whatever, it just goes out the window. Like, I was at breakfast with my little guy Friday morning after all this went down, and there's I'll just tell you, in Indiana, the 65 plus white male Christian crowd that was also there was
yes.
It's just rigged. It's just rigged.
Right.
Rejecting it out of hand. There's no, I can't emphasize enough how little thought and care goes into actually thinking
Christian.
about what happened. It's just out the window, right? It's just gone.
Yeah.
And so I think
100%.
those are some of the underlying kind of foundations as to why. But in the moment, it's just knee-jerk, right? It's just reacting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, sorry, April, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I found very frustrating in the whole ordeal, in the more Christian nationalist flavor Christian response, is that they're saying, this was just politically motivated, as a complete dismissal of the whole crime. But I haven't seen anyone actually address what the trial was about.
Right.
Especially from a Christian, that is the thing I think that is so frustrating for me as a Christian who was raised in this, who was taught that character matters, and, who was raised in purity culture. And I was sex out marriage is the worst thing that you can do. That's ingrained in my brain. And now they have the chosen one, as they call him, on trial for, an alleged affair with a porn star.
Yeah.
And paying her. And there's just silence on the actual matter. And it's just no, it was politically motivated, so it doesn't matter. It's all rigged. It's all do they just think it's all made up? There was evidence.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is the more that they can remain, and I think this is a chosen thing. And I use this term not as an aspersion, although it's going to feel that way, but the more ignorant you can remain to what actually took place, then you don't have to really think through the implications of it, right? So if Trump had just said, I had sex and gave money, none of this really would have happened. It's that he hid it, right? And it was the cover-up that was the crime. It wasn't... Right. But that is, like you said, April, that's not even a part of what's going on as they think about it. It's just, remaining ignorant as to why he was even there. Just the fact that he was there. Yeah. That's it. Right.
Yeah. Yes. And by the way, even if it was politically motivated, if there was a felony committed, a felony was committed. Let me be clear about something. Right now, Hunter Biden is on trial. They're actually looking at Hunter Biden, and he's on, I think, a gun charge. If he's guilty, he's guilty. I'm not okay. You really don't see what you don't see, broadly speaking, as far as I can tell, from Democrats or progressives, is this narrative that, it's going to be a rigged jury in Hunter Biden's case if he has a jury. Maybe it's just going to a trial with the judge. But there isn't the same narrative happening. Now, listen, I think we could all agree that in a lot of ways the Hunter Biden thing is politically motivated. We watched him be subpoenaed, and we watched Marjorie Taylor Greene try and really embarrass him in front of the national stage. We can all say it was politically motivated. He's still going to trial because he probably, or allegedly right now, committed potentially a felony. Okay. Why are we okay with people in the upper echelon of society getting away with things that they commit that people who are the average American would never get away with? Right? And why? Yeah. And this, I think that and I'm kind of riffing off of Jon Stewart here. He talked about this the other day, so it's kind of fresh in my head. But John makes a good point of this only exposes what we're so used to, that politicians can get away with it and the average Joe can't. Or that, if someone robs a bank, for example, this is an example that John uses. If he says, if a black man robs a bank for $10,000, he gets put away for 20 years. If a bank clerk steals $1 million, they get maybe a year or two, or maybe just probation, like the white collar crime versus non-white collar crimes, right? Yeah, so we can see how the system is already unfavorable. So I'm happy to see any politician that's guilty of committing some kind of felony be brought to justice, because that's not okay. That is part of the problem, in my estimation. So even if it was politically motivated, fine with me.
Right.
Fine with me.
I've got some comments too that were like, you don't know what this means. We're gonna, we can charge Biden and Obama and all the Democrat presidents next. And I'm like, great. If they commit a crime, charge them. Do you have evidence?
Right.
Like, I think that's the difference. Like, they hold
That's the
Trump
difference.
to this, like,
That's the
like
difference.
he can do no wrong. I'm like, we don't worship our politicians.
Well,
Like,
that's
they're politicians.
exactly it. I mean, April, you and I share a lot of the same corners of the internet. You know that Biden is getting raked over the coals for his
Right.
funding of the genocide of the Palestinian people. Like, there are
Yeah.
progressives who are like, and then after most recently his newest immigration asylum seeker ban that he's implementing, people on the left are livid with Biden. There's no pass being given. You don't see that overall in right-wing spaces with Trump. And I think the difference is exactly what you said, Andrew, is this strong man, we need an authoritarian leader to take over. And so we're going to just become a sycophant of that person no matter what they do, as opposed to in more, again, I'm being general here, but in more progressive spaces or democratic spaces, Joe Biden is an elected official that works for the people and will be held accountable if he doesn't do the will of the people that we voted him in to do. And so that's why there's such a difference. Just to prove your point, Andrew, because I know that you mentioned earlier that there is this like bent in Christian nationalist spaces to want an authoritarian leader, and a lot of people are new to the show. They might not believe you because they might think it's such an extreme take. Here, I mean, again, we always have the receipts. One thing you're going to hear on this show often is we always have the receipts. This is Joel Webbin. Okay, this is I would say this person is on the rise of influence in Christian nationalism spaces. He says a lot of crazy stuff. Here's something he said, just again to prove your point about needing an authoritarian leader.
God appoints some kind of ruler who is unapologetically Christian, and he comes in with a sword and says, I'm sorry, but lawlessness and wickedness will not be tolerated anymore. And he doesn't force conversions, just for the record, because that's another one of the objections that's just ill-founded. He doesn't go around forcing conversions, but instead what he does is he forces external morality. He doesn't force a change of heart. Only the gospel can do that. But what a king can do is he can say, whether you're regenerate or not, you're going to pretend. You're at least going to pretend to be Christian. They're not free thinkers. They're not courageous. They're not intelligent. They're men, and men must be governed. And if they must be governed, then our prayer as Christians is that they would be governed in the right direction, at least, for the good of the church. God.
There you go.
For the good of the church.
That's exactly what you just said, Andrew. And there is someone who has a large platform online, it's only growing, saying the quiet part out loud. And how he reconciles unapologetically Christian with Trump is beyond me, but that's exactly who he's talking about here.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, those types of clips are so important as some of these thought leaders kind of come more and more into the fore. But yeah, too, and in the future we can do this as well. But when we gather data of the American public and we look at folks that strongly embrace Christian nationalism, I think for me, that's the part that's really impactful, is that we do see support for more authoritarian forms of governing among the populace, right? It isn't just these folks who are influencers or, are speaking at these different things, but it's that it's reaching an audience and that there are folks that are receptive to that for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I know, Andrew, that your time is limited today. I did want to get into kind of maybe our main topic that you wanted to bring up regarding, first off, happy Pride Month again to all of our queer neighbors and friends. I hope that you're enjoying the month as most of us celebrate you and who you are. You are beautiful, you are loved, and you are, of course, welcomed at TNE. But I know, Andrew, you had some data that talked about maybe, how people in America view marriage and how that corresponds to Christian nationalism. Do you want to kind of set us up, and then I can pull up the graphs as you need them?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I thought this would be a useful example because as we talk about Christian nationalism, and as I just said a little bit ago, there are this cultural baggage that comes along with that term Christian, right? So the Christian and Christian nationalism isn't just about these historic Orthodox Christian beliefs, but this extra cultural baggage that gets put onto that. So when people are talking about Christian, they mean these other things too, like discomfort with authoritarian social control. But another key cultural element of Christian nationalism is this desire to organize society according to what we call traditionalist social arrangements and relationships and hierarchies, right? So as they view society operating according to what they believe the Christian God wants, it's that it should have this hierarchy with certain people at the top, others in the middle, and others at the bottom. And an ideal society is one where men lead and women support. Marriage is ideally heterosexual, and families with a mom and a dad are committed to procreation. And so American citizens and families that represent these ideals will then have the easiest access to civil rights and liberties that America provides. And to the degree that you don't align with that in this cultural framework of Christian nationalism, you'll be denied easy access. And so as with this month and Pride Month, right, I think it kind of helps underscore and see why, even with changes in the last 10 years of what's available within the U.S., it's still under discussion, right? There are still folks in powerful positions are thinking, we need to maybe roll this back, or we need to find other ways. And so this kind of helps as to why. So when we look at a nationally representative sample of American adults, and this was gathered by PRRI in 2023, we can see that Christian nationalism is strongly associated with
is it this opposition. One you want, or the other one?
That's perfect. Yeah, this is the one with opposition to same-sex marriage. So they're on the left as you look at it, right? We're asking if folks oppose gay marriage, and ambassadors. These are the folks that strongly embrace Christian nationalism. And so Americans, and this again of the broad American public, those Americans that strongly embrace Christian nationalism, around 3/4 oppose gay marriage. Right. And when we look at accommodators, these are folks that maybe are on the fence, but lean towards accepting it, or maybe just stay quiet. Right.
Yeah. Like they'll tolerate it.
Yeah, exactly. We see, 4 in 10 want to oppose gay marriage. When we look at whether small business owners should refuse services to gay or lesbian people, and this comes up over and over as people talk about quote unquote religious liberty. Right. So whether it's the Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado or others. We see again ambassadors. 61% say yes. If these small business owners think that serving gay or lesbian people opposes their religious faith, they should be able to do that, right? And so when we look at this and we think of this traditionalist social arrangement, we see that Americans who embrace Christian nationalism are more likely to want to move into that social and civil sphere and ensure that their beliefs, right, are aligned with what happens in the U.S. Now, one interesting thing that we see, an interesting wrinkle, I guess we could say, in the data, is that all Americans have liberalized in their views towards same-sex marriage over the past 15 to 20 years, right? Every single one, and even ambassadors of Christian nationalism. So on the next little slide, Americans who strongly
Can I just bring up one thing really quick about
go ahead.
This graph, if you don't mind, if I can interrupt you. It is interesting, though, on the middle graph here, allow small business owners to refuse service to gay or lesbian people. 26% of resistors are in favor of that. That's surprising to me. And same thing for the favor of overturning Roe v. Wade. 28% of people who resist. That's still, to me, a shockingly high number. Even though it's still on the fringe, so to speak, it's still a good chunk of people. So that was just an interesting observation to me. I wanted to point that out. That surprised me.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, too, with these large samples that we draw in surveys. There's always going to be variation, which is important to show that it isn't just this, binary either or, but as you more strongly embrace or just resist, right, there's going to be a lot of difference there. And so, what this means then as it gets worked out can mean a lot of things. But I think it's an important point to show. Yeah.
All right. Next slide.
Yeah, definitely. So this is something that Sam Perry and I showed in our first book, Taking America Back for God. So those 4 bars on the left there, that was data gathered in 2007, right? And we can see that ambassadors, that red group, only 6% said they would support gay marriage, right? But when we asked these exact same questions 10 years later, and those 4 bars to the right in the 2017 survey, you see that 25% of ambassadors supported gay marriage. Now, that's obviously still a minority.
Right.
But we see that every single group over those intervening 10 years, and obviously in 2015, that was the Supreme Court decision, that changed a lot. But we see all Americans were liberalizing. But
Wow.
Those folks that strongly embrace Christian nationalism are liberalizing a little bit more slowly than other groups, but they're all changing. And so I think that's
Huh.
an important wrinkle, something to think through and be aware of, that it isn't as though this opposition is just steadfast, but that it does respond to these cultural changes.
I mean,
So
it went up almost 5 times, right? I mean, it was 5.8%
right.
in 2007 for ambassadors. And ambassadors, friends, these are like your adherents is another way of talking about them. These are maybe like your people who would listen to Charlie Kirk every day or Ben Shapiro. They really want to be all in. Maybe I see them at America Fest. So this is like your real militant, strict, I'm all in here. To have them go up by almost fivefold in a decade, it's still a very promising progress. Like it didn't tank, it went up. But to your point, on this graph, especially if you're watching on YouTube, it is pretty stark compared to other rejectors who are now at 95% in favor of supporting gay marriage, while only 25% of ambassadors would. So it's still a very low number, but in another way, very promising as well.
Yeah. So over those 10 years, we saw this shift. Now, even today, we're, from 2017, we're like 6 or 7 years from that time. It hasn't really budged much, right? And so they could only go up, but they still did. And so it is something to look at and kind of be aware of. But then, so as we look at Christian nationalism and we think about this cultural element of traditionalist social arrangements, these folks see the nation as only running properly if it does adhere to this hierarchy, right? And this includes really powerful people in political positions of influence, like Mike Johnson, right? So the Speaker of the House. So when he was asked about his past comments on same-sex marriage, right? So he wrote back in the mid-2000s that, and I'm quoting him here, "It's the dark harbinger of chaos and sexual anarchy that could doom even the strongest republic." Right. So he saw any move towards legalizing same-sex unions or marriage as something that will destroy the United States.
Right.
He responded when people brought that up. He said, "I don't even remember some of these comments." He says, "I generally love all people, regardless of their lifestyle choices. This is not about the people themselves."
I know.
Okay. So, but I really want to focus on what he said here because I think it's really important. So,
sorry, go ahead.
Loves all people, regardless of their lifestyle choices. And he says it's not about the people themselves. So there's a particular logic here at work, right? Something akin to, and you've all heard this, love the sinner, hate the sin, right?
Yeah.
So Johnson and others who embrace this Christian nationalism, they may not individually, they say at least, dislike those folks that don't align with these cultural elements, like the traditionalist hierarchy. But they're clear that this country is not for them. Right?
Right. Right.
This signals, again, that this fight isn't necessarily at the individual level, but it's at the national systemic level, right? They have a vision for how this society and nation should be structured. So the full inclusion into the civic life is seen as only for those who are true Americans, right? It's viewed as a privilege. And privileges, for all of us who might have kids, right, are only for those that are worthy, right? Privileges can be revoked. It isn't about a right, it's about a privilege. So folks that don't align with these cultural elements, again, it's not just about Orthodox Christian beliefs, but again, embracing these cultural elements like traditionalist social arrangements. If you don't align with that, you're not a true American in their eyes, and therefore you can be denied full access to the benefits of being an American citizen. So when we look at opposition towards gay rights in this country and the ongoing opposition of those who embrace Christian nationalism, that's the logic at work here. That's what's at play. There's a vision for this society, and you need to align with this cultural element. And those that don't, right, they can live here, but they can't be fully included. And so I think that's the state of affairs that we find ourselves in today.
No, really well put.
I think too, just from like a theological standpoint, especially in a lot of these people would adhere to like complementarianism, where the wife submits to the husband. In the umbrella graphic, you have Christ, husband, wife, and then the children. Like I think,
and that's
just
not how umbrellas work, right?
Right, exactly. But I think just from a basic theological standpoint, they don't have a place to put queer people. If you have two men, who is submitting to whom? Like there has to be a hierarchy. And, in a lot of queer relationships, there's just no head of household. It's a decapitated head. It's just a partnership. And that alone just messes with their own theological framework.
For sure. Yeah. So we've done other studies too, looking at gendered images of God, right? And so some folks that see God as a he, right, is this underlying view into seeing the world, the very nature of reality, as gendered, right? That men represent God and God is over everything. And so men are just like that over women. But then how does that relate to, as you said, April, relationships that can't reflect that? So what do we do with that? And they, just reject it out of hand. And so, yeah, this is definitely wrapped up in that for sure.
Wow. No, I think it's really well put, Andrew, and really helpful. I think also about the most recent news that the Republicans in the Senate, I believe, have blocked a contraception access bill, right? So Democrats tried to pass a bill that would just make sure that people had the right to access contraceptives, and Republicans said, no, we reject that. And again, I've always wondered the logic of this, because I know that the pro-life crowd's all about erasing or eradicating abortion, and one way to minimize the amount of abortions is to get people access to contraceptives so they don't get pregnant when it wasn't planned, right? Just kind of stop it way ahead of time. And I think that the logic is similar to what you just said earlier, where there is this belief that a rightly ordered society is a man and a woman having many children, and we can't prohibit that. And so therefore these things like contraceptives and even sex education that might give people more autonomy and family planning must be stopped, so that way we are able to continue populating the U.S. And then I think this does, whether folks realize it or not, tie back into the quiverful movement, which also ties back into white supremacy. That the fact is that we as white people have to have as many babies as we can to kind of keep our ethnic identity as an American society going. And we hear this when people like Charlie Kirk mention how quote unquote third worlders, immigrants, are flooding our nation to dilute the voting population, and so this is all code that ultimately comes back, I think, to whiteness and white supremacy in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yes. Good job.
Yes. Thank you. Please applaud for that monologue. But I do think that, and this is why, Andrew, you do, and I've been trying to get better at calling it white Christian nationalism. And that word white is important here, right? Could you kind of maybe, before you got to jet, I know you got to leave in a few minutes here, just kind of expound on why white Christian nationalism and not just Christian nationalism?
Yeah, no, I think for the reasons that you highlighted, when we're looking at religion in the U.S. and religious history, even before the founding of the United States, as religion and Western Europeans brought their religion to these shores, racial categories and Christianity in this nation were being created alongside each other. And they needed to be able to underscore why they could take the land of those who were already here or enslave folks that they were bringing with them.
Right.
And part of that was, the Christian God has a doctrine of discovery, that we're supposed to go and take this land, and that it's our destiny to continue to take this land or operate in the way that we're operating. And so all these things are intertwined. And so when we're talking about white Christian nationalism, it isn't necessarily the skin color of the person holding these views, right? But it's that it's underscoring whiteness. And whiteness is seeing, this society or any organized and structured in such a way that one group tends to have greater access to power, privilege, wealth, all of those things. Yeah. And in this society, white Americans as a whole, not every single one, right, but when we look at the group level, tend to have 10 times the wealth of black families, higher levels of education, all of these different things. And so when we're talking about white Christian nationalism, it is this idea that it's underscoring privilege for white Americans as a group, with how this nation is supposed to be structured in their view.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Do you have to jet? Because I know it's almost time. Do you have to go?
Yeah, okay. Just a couple minutes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, before we let you go, then, I appreciate you kind of giving us the data on this stuff. It's really important. I know for April as well, we share the same goal. We want to be as informed as we can, and we definitely don't want to straw man or be hyperbolic in the claims that we're making. And I know that for a lot of people, especially if you're new to TNE or just this world of Christian nationalism, the claims can sound outrageous. Like, wait, you're telling me that there are people out there who really want to do this, or that if given the chance, they might add the Apostles' Creed into the Constitution? Yes, like we have them on tape saying this, And so I think, though, while it's one thing to pull up anecdotal pieces of evidence, someone said this, showing the broad group think that can go on, the general trends, who people support, why they support, and the undergirding worldview beneath that is so important, because it gives us, I hope and I believe, a glimpse into what the future can look like if this Christian nationalist ethos gets what it wants in terms of power and influence in the country. And I do believe sincerely, and I hate to sound like a talk radio host, as someone who grew up on talk radio, always talking about how if Democrats get elected, America won't be here anymore. I do believe that while America will still be here, if certain people get elected, it will not look nearly as equitable as it is now, and that's saying something, because we still have major problems that we have yet to address. So I think that the only path is further down that hierarchical level, to your point, Andrew, where, hey, God has ordered society this way. And to what Joel Webbin said a couple minutes ago in that clip I just shared, I'm not concerned about getting people saved spiritually. They just have to pretend to be Christians. They have to pretend to act this certain way and behave this way in order to be here. That should really terrify us, especially when you consider people like Mike Johnson and other folks on the Supreme Court would hold, at a minimum, sympathetic views to that kind of talk, at a minimum. And so I think it's really important for us to expose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, a key point there too is that it isn't as though folks with differing views and even holding some of these views aren't allowed to hold those views, to vote in such a way, right, to live in America and to bring their religion and their religious views into the public sphere. Those should be allowed, right? We want that. But it means that we all have to agree to the same rules, right, and a level playing field of a pluralistic democratic society where we respect the results of elections. And if you lose an election, then you reevaluate and go back and then do what you can, not do away with it or say it's all rigged, even though there's no evidence, right? Those are the things that we need to talk about. Because some folks, will say, with our research, you're just trying to push these folks out of American civic life. And that's not true. They have just as much of a right to be at the table as anybody else, but they don't necessarily have the right to claim the head of the seat at the table. Right? We're all supposed to be able to sit around the table and be a part of this process that takes compromise. It's going to be difficult, right? And so that's a part of the ongoing work. But I think that's an important point to make. It isn't the silencing of voices, but it's allowing many voices to be a part of it. And what we see over and over empirically is that embracing Christian nationalism, folks are less likely to want to allow any other voices at the table. And that's the problem.
It's the difference between these are my beliefs, so I won't do that because they go against my beliefs, versus these are my beliefs, so you can't do that because it goes against my beliefs. Yeah,
I kind of think about it. I mean, maybe to sum it up briefly, and then you can jet. It seems like there's people in America who go, listen, America has a real problem of systemic injustice, especially towards historically marginalized groups. We should be bringing them into this table of democracy as much as possible, and giving them not just a seat in the room, but a seat at the table. And that looks like making room for people, right? Which is kind of lowering what we might call as our privilege, just to build more equity, right? It's not taking away our rights, it's giving rights to others. That's one way. And then you have another group that would say, no. We have to maintain the privilege that we had and have, and we have to maintain this seat at this table and keep those groups there, even farther away, in order to maintain it how we want. That's the difference. And so when you have people like that, working with them is difficult, if not impossible, because they can't see compromise as a positive thing. They can't see reason and trying to make room for other ways of seeing the world as positive, right? And so I think that's kind of the two different trajectories that we're looking at, broadly speaking, of course, in society in America. And my charge to people is just to choose wisely when it comes to political and cultural norms that we choose to tolerate and accept versus what we don't.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Awesome. Andrew, if folks want to find your work, where can they find you? I know that you're public.
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm on Instagram, and I still call it Twitter. I'm there a little less. Have a Substack, American Idolatry, just like the book. But that's kind of where I am. And then obviously I enjoy dropping in once a month with you all. So
I love it.
People can find me there too. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you here in just a few weeks. We're gonna have you on twice this month to catch back up. So we'll see you at the end of the month, and we'll see what the newest update is with all this stuff. So
Yeah, no, sounds good. Good to see you all.
You too. I'll see you later on. See you, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
I love having Andrew talk, though. It's great to bring him on.
That's good.
Does this stuff just like freak you out? I'm a able-bodied white man, so I think like no matter what happens,
You'll be
I
okay.
know that me as an embodied white man will be fine, unless like well, maybe not, because I'm pretty outspoken against these people, but it
Right.
will not be at the same level as someone like you, or Janice, friends that we have in this space who are black, or queer friends. Like, it's just very different. So what do you like, how do you feel about this stuff ultimately?
Yeah, no, it definitely freaks me out because one, there's a bunch of people within this Christian nationalism sect that literally want to get rid of the women's right to vote.
I know.
Like beyond the birth control and the
I know.
like they really do. There are people that really want women to go back home and just raise babies.
That's it. Household vote.
Right. And not to mention like Beecher, my spouse,
Right.
like the anti-queer aspect in it all. No, it definitely freaks me out. I have hope because I do think there's more there, like majority wise, like there are more people that are against that. But
Totally.
but the idea of what we would have to do if these people were to get in power to get that, like there'd have to be a revolution. Anyway, yes, it does freak me out. All that to say is yes. I try not to think about it. I'm trying to just focus on exposing Christian nationalism and hope that enough people will make sure that, because honestly, local elections matter so much too.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the worst of the, anti-LGBTQ oppression and marginalization is happening at the state level. And I don't think people realize just how much power is in the locals. Like local elections make or break a lot of rights within those states.
I know it's Friday. We're supposed to be jovial, but sometimes you just have those moments where you got to just have the conversation because one of the excuses I hear from evangelicals is they go, "Oh, this is fringe." And my response is, yeah, it is. And they still have access to serious power.
Yeah.
Like they still have access and want leverage to power for that exact reason. Right. The data is very clear. Almost every Christian nationalist position is overwhelmingly unpopular in America. Whether it's abortion, gay rights, even healthcare, immigration, unpopular. They know that, which is why they don't care about democracy right now. If the majority of people in America held their views, the talking point would be different. It would be, listen, this is what America wants. We have to be obedient to democracy and do the will of the people, but it's not. So now it's, we need an authoritarian leader. Oh, we need someone who will just make people pretend to be Christian, aka like us, And so I have hope that ultimately there are enough people out there who, when they realize what's going on, will say absolutely not, which is why I feel the need to always be talking about this stuff as publicly as possible, because the more we expose it, I think the more people are going to be like, this is a thing, and we'll be like, yes, it's a thing, please vote accordingly. So that's kind of like my hope in this, but it's still scary.
Right. Because the thing is, I think the majority of these really terrible beliefs of repealing women's right to vote and, all the other things are fringe. I don't think the anti-LGBTQ stuff is very fringe, though. That's pretty mainstream evangelical. But a lot of the theocratic, the people that want a theocracy, yes, that is fringe. But the biggest problem is that you don't have mainstream Christians calling out the fringe. Currently, the people on the fringes, on the outside, that have these extreme beliefs feel very comfortable within mainstream evangelicalism because they are not being called out. They are being welcomed. And here's the thing, we're calling it out now because if you wait until it's no longer fringe, you no longer have the power to stop it.
As we speak, Dream City Church, a mega church in Arizona, is hosting Trump for a town hall meeting. After he was found guilty, he's officially a convicted felon. Dream City Church is going to host him, regardless of all of his sexual immorality and his lying. And you're not going to see one evangelical gatekeeper condemn that church. Just think about this for a second. I mean, this is such a good example of how ass backwards it all is. When Andy Stanley and North Point did their unconditional conference, which all they did was let two gay men who were married speak and offered parents a way to reconcile loving their gay kids or queer kids and not losing their faith. It was not nearly as radical as I would hope, frankly.
Right.
And
then Andy made a sermon after the fact and still said, I believe in traditional marriage.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the evangelical world went bonkers. Al Mohler writes an article. All these different websites come out of the woodwork. Look at this. Andy's going woke. He's progressive. Yada, 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 yada. Luke Barnett at Dream City Church will host Trump, I think it's this week, and you're not going to hear a single peep. You're not going to hear one article written about how dare a pastor host such an immoral man and really desecrate the pulpit by doing this. No. You're not going to hear a peep. And it shows where their heart is and what's important to them. And no matter what they might say, because often what I hear is well, listen, Tim, no, I'm not saying that it's not sin. I'm just saying they always have an excuse for why they don't highlight it. Regardless of the excuse, the fact is very simple. Their actions show that they just don't care about this stuff, and they care about any movement towards inclusion for queer folks in anywhere in society or in the church. I mean, I was talking to, Billy Horde, a trans woman that I've had on the podcast. She's wonderful. I texted her. I said, Billy, am I the only one who feels like conservative evangelical men are more obsessed with gay sex than queer people and are also more obsessed with Pride Month than most queer people? She said, no, like, you're totally right. Because the stuff they talk about all day on Twitter, it's like, I think you're obsessed. I think you are obsessed. They do not stop talking about queer people, even though there's no legal mandate or legal law forcing these people to have queer folks at their church or to somehow leave their heterosexual marriages and participate in a queer marriage. That's not it at all. All Pride Month is an acknowledgement that queer people exist. They've been historically marginalized. They're still marginalized, and they deserve equity and freedom. And even for that to happen, for these white evangelical bros, they are losing their minds. They can't even accept, to Andrew's point earlier, a different person at the seat of the table, at the table of democracy. It is too much for them. Their brains literally short circuit. It's crazy.
I have seen more pride posts from evangelical people than from queer people.
I know.
This month. Like, y'all are the ones putting it in front of everybody's mind.
They are obsessed. They are the ones obsessed. Like, literally. Hey, if you don't want to watch that show, just don't watch it. If you really have this conviction about whatever it is, then just don't participate. Don't watch Star Wars. Don't watch whatever show you think is woke all of a sudden. Tell queer people they're not welcome at your church. They'll find other places. And by the way, let me just say, if there's any conservative evangelicals listening, let me do you a favor. I promise you, queer people know you don't like them. Queer people know they're not welcome at your church. Queer people know queer folks know that you think they are inherently sinful, and they know it. They know. You did it. You did the thing. You have spoken out, air quotes, on, quote, homosexuality, and you've condemned it. Congratulations. Now, leave us alone. Leave them alone. Go back to your four and no more in your churches and say whatever you want behind your pulpit. It's a free country. You have free speech. Do it. Leave people alone. But that's not what it's about, is it? No, it's about what Andrew said earlier. They need the power. They want the cultural society to reflect their views. It's not enough for them to hold it. And you said this earlier too. It's not enough for them to hold these views or for them to hold these theological positions. Everyone else must now submit to it in the culture. And that means that queer people are the target. And they're the ones whose rights are at most at risk right now.
Right. And I do think I still see a lot of people going after gay marriage, but that has died down quite a bit. It does seem like the focus now is more on gender and trans identity.
Yeah, I think so too. But there's almost a resurgence of people calling to overturn Obergefell, and I think Supreme Court Justice, was it Clarence Thomas?
Yes,
I think
he mentioned that.
Yeah, in his opinion about Roe v. Wade, right? So one thing I don't want to do, and I'm not saying you're doing this or this isn't my point. What I don't want to do is pretend that it's outside the realm of possibility.
Oh, right.
Oh,
yeah.
no. Like, I had someone tell me, Tim, why are you worried about women's suffrage being repealed? It's never going to happen. I'm like, are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? No, it absolutely can happen if these folks get the power they want. They will make it happen one way or another. Make no mistake. And so I'm with you. I don't hear it as often all the time, but if Obergefell gets overturned, you will see mass celebration from those same people who are quiet about it. It's still in the back of their head.
The same people that celebrated the overturning of Roe. And we were even saying too, like, don't overturn Roe because they're going to come for birth control and contraceptives next. And they're like,
yes,
no, they won't.
Exactly.
And, yesterday or on Wednesday, we saw Republican senators block that bill. And there are active bills in different states of people wanting to ban contraceptives because they also believe that's a form of abortion.
100. Look at the IVF ruling in Alabama. I really hope, you never know your impact, right? I hope people who listen to the show are waking up to what is on the table in 2024 America. Like, I hope you're waking up. And I hope that when you read the news and you see, I don't get it. Why would Republicans block an act, this right to contraceptives? I hope that we're helping you fill in the details, because it's not a Republican Party anymore in the common conservative sense. It is a hijacked Christian nationalist party who has a mandate they believe from God to make society adhere to these so-called, term used very loosely, Christian values. That's what's going on here. This is a militant theological perspective that is using politics to enact their will on everyone else. That's the goal here.
Right. And I mean, just look at the conservative praise for Harrison Butker's speech, too, where he was basically just telling women, like, yeah, but what you really want is to be in the kitchen. That is the quiet part of this Christian nationalist movement. They want to get rid of birth control because they want women to be pregnant, because they want women to stay home. They don't want them in the workforce.
1,000%. Folks, by the way, speaking of that, this past Wednesday, I went live on YouTube with Father Jim Bretsky. He's a Catholic theologian, and we unpacked the entire Harrison Butker speech from a Catholic perspective. It was fascinating. That's not out on the audio podcast right now. It will come out next week. But if you want to watch it on YouTube, it's out, and it's worth it because, to your point, there's a lot of connection and overlap between what's called the trad Catholic movement and this Christian nationalist space. There's a lot of overlap. So it's important, folks. I know for a lot of people this might feel overwhelming and like, oh my gosh, like, how do you keep track of this? April and I and the podcast, we really do our best to bring it to you in digestible ways to help you understand what's happening. We're kind of doing the work in a lot of ways to bring it to you, but it's part of your job is to stay afloat on this. It is to stay up to date on this and to tell people, whether it's your friends, your family, your social media channels, what's going on to spread the word. Our reach is only so big, but when this stuff is disseminated through more people, hopefully more Americans wake up to what's actually happening. That's just so important right now.
And just to give some hope, so it's not so doom and gloom.
Happy Friday!
There's two things that are hopeful. If I can remember the second one, hopefully. I don't want to pull a Rick Perry. But the first one is that you have Catholics and Protestants that really disagree on some theological basis, who are kind of unified at the moment in Christian nationalism. Like, they are coming together under the guise of the culture war, because they do agree on a lot of stuff. But if they were to get in power, you have so many different theological beliefs that are represented within Christian nationalism. It's going to be a shit show, because they're not going to agree on which theology is the right theology. If they need to pray to the saints, there's going to be trouble. So
100%.
they've not thought it through. There will be a lot of succession type drama within it. Someone just knocked on my door.
Whoa.
I know. Suspicious.
Maybe it's Jesus knocking on the door of your heart.
Yeah. Or it's Satan. Let him in. No, according to Christian nationalism, he's already here.
Yeah, right. No, totally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What was the other one?
Please you pulled a Rick Perry.
I think I did. Hold on. I'm going to get it. We were talking about the hope of this. There was another thing that was hopeful. Listen, I didn't sleep very much last night because I couldn't. Every time I laid down without looking at my phone or reading my Kindle, I started crying because my dog died on Monday. So I'm
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
another sad.
April, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's fine. He was old, so we were
It's
expecting
still
it.
painful though.
I know. I don't think if it comes back to me, we'll come
Okay.
back. We'll just move on. I'm
All right,
very
we can move
sad
on
about
for now.
this.
Why don't we get to a few? Man, this is a terrible transition. We can do a few different tweets of the week if you want to do that. I don't really. I mean, we got to wrap it up
Friday.
soon. Happy Friday, Christian nationalism.
Dead dog.
Love
It's
dogs
great.
passing away, and I mean, I'm drinking blueberry coffee. That's a positive, I guess. It is Friday.
Yeah.
I will say, if it helps you, I didn't sleep well at all either. So in New Jersey, we have the Jersey Shore, we have the boardwalk. It's kind of an iconic thing to do. So we took the kids to one of the boardwalks yesterday with some friends, and we ate boardwalk food, which is just like pizza and burgers and cheese fries. So I ate a lot of that, and then I just, it didn't sit well, and I was having really weird dreams where I was in my old childhood church, and Mark Driscoll was there. And I was condemning Mark Driscoll publicly, and people were yelling at me. We had this huge. I mean, I just had really weird dreams. So, and then this is probably TMI, but I don't care. I'm going to say it because we're all friends here on the podcast, and I am always transparent with you. I think I have a pimple coming through a little bit on my head, but I didn't know that, and so I woke up and I'm like, why is my head sore right here? And I have health anxiety, so I'm like, it's head cancer. This is a lump that I have to get diagnosed like tomorrow. I was tired, but
I know that
so
happens.
I was just all out of sorts today. I didn't go to the gym. Oh, you have it? Did you find it?
I remembered it. I wrote it down so I don't forget it again. The other thing.
The poor audience. Such
the
whiplash.
other hope that we have
All right.
in Christian nationalism is that people can change.
Yes.
That
they
people
can.
who are Christian nationalists today may not be Christian nationalists tomorrow. I am living proof of that. People can change. And the more that we talk about it and just expose like, hey, because I do think a majority of people within this, maybe not the ones in power, but the people that vote and want Christian, a Christian nation back, I think they genuinely want to follow the teachings of Jesus, and they believe that they are. And if we can get them to realize that what they are doing is actually not loving your neighbor and not following Christ, a lot people will change.
Because he lives, I can face tomorrow.
I'm standing with the chosen one.
Da-ba-ba-da.
Do the Trump dance. What's that
Yeah.
little thing he always does?
Yeah.
His little fist.
I love how, by the way, in that video, they have clips of Trump saying, I'm the chosen one. Like he actually said. Okay. Well,
yeah.
now that we're all done talking about health anxiety and cheese fries and all the sad stuff and also hope, how about I think we're going to call it now the posts of the week, right? Because it's not just on Twitter that we're talking about.
At least for this week, yeah.
Okay. The posts of the week. I mean, I do have.
Also, they're technically not tweets anymore anyway because it's
Good point.
X.
What do you call them?
I
guess
still call them
posts.
tweets because stupid Elon Musk can't.
Do you want to read this one?
I sure
This
do.
is our favorite conservative millennial,
Allie Beth Stuckey.
Yeah, someone who really cares about protecting children from groomers and really cares about sexual ethics because she's all about condemning, queer marriage, and she believes in the biblical ethic of sexual purity. Here's her tweet regarding the Trump verdict.
Here we go.
Good luck. Thoughts and prayers.
Here, this is what Allie said.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Trump's character. Parentheses, and there are things to be said. Thanks, Allie. But the fact that all of his children and grandchildren seem to adore, respect, and stand by him is astounding and speaks volumes. On the other hand, Biden has disowned one of his grandchildren, and his daughter says she was forced to take showers with him when she was old enough to realize it was wrong. Can't have any conversations about, quote, decency without acknowledging this stark contrast.
Yeah. I just feel the need to say two things about this briefly, then we can just destroy the rest of it. This Biden taking showers with his daughter thing, at a minimum, is not super confirmed. This comes from, it was originally, here's the long story short, friends. His daughter's diary was stolen from her and was given over to a right-wing expose site called Project Veritas. The person who stole it has been convicted officially. Like, she was guilty of stealing this diary. And when this all came out a while ago, before this trial happened, there was allegedly leaked photos of the diary where this was being said. Snopes reported it as false because the access to these pages that they had did not match up to what was supposedly said about Biden taking a shower with his daughter. But then, what's his daughter's name? I'm blanking on her name. But
is it Ashley?
I think it's Ashley. We'll call her Ashley. Ashley, during the trial of this whole theft, said that that the journal coming out has and also be taking and also certain things being taken out of context has done immense harm to her and her family. And so then Snopes changed that claim to maybe like mixed. And so now people like Ali and others are calling that the smoking gun, that definitely Joe Biden took a shower or showers with his daughter who was old enough to realize it was wrong. But it's a very murky and like very unsubstantiated claim. But again, in this world, things like that become gospel because they support the narrative that Joe Biden is whatever. And so it's just worth really pointing out here that like this whole dichotomy of one person being actually convicted in a court of law with 34 felonies and this alleged scenario that's very murky are very different. And yet here we are with Ali Stuckey, the harbinger of sexual purity and ethics, insisting that Trump's character isn't that bad because his grandchildren and children respect and adore him. Last thing about this, I must point out, it is pretty much now confirmed multiple different ways that Trump has been found liable of sexually assaulting at least one woman. He's bragged about sexually assaulting many more. Yeah. And we now know that he's cheated on all 3 of his marriages, most recently with an adult film star, and then paid hush money off to her.
Those are just that we know of.
Yeah, that we know of. That would be literally the definition of a groomer. And the fact that Ali thinks it's wise, and she did share a video of Trump hugging his grandchildren as proof of like, hey, we have to get this out to people to show how loving he is. It's interesting to see Ali be okay with a man who's done those things be around children. Like, that's interesting to me. Ali, I thought that you were all about protecting children from sexual predators, and Trump is actually a confirmed sexual predator. But yet here you are posting videos of him with his grandchildren, trying to show people how great of a grandfather he is. Okay, noted. I just write that down in my batshit crazy things that conservative pundits say, and check it off.
Yeah. Yeah, my father-in-law, actually, he doesn't have a dog in the fight. He's really not that political. But he was just saying how, with this kind of rhetoric that he was saying, how he was looking at his grandchildren, so my girls, and if he had to choose that his granddaughters had to be in a room alone with either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, he would by far choose Joe Biden.
I think any sane person would. I mean, I don't mean that in the sense of, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I was even going to say. No, I stand behind that. Any sane person would.
Not even
any
to
sane
mention
person
the
would.
weird comments Trump has made about Ivanka, that if she were not his daughter, he would date her.
Look here. I pulled it up. I'm gonna pull it up. I have to, friends. If you're listening on the podcast, go watch it on YouTube. Here is my screen's messed up here. Let me adjust this. Here is the tweet that Ali Stuckey posted May 31st. Is it Lara or is it Laura?
Laura.
All right. Lara Trump just posted this to Instagram, and I am formally requesting that every day we get a new video of Trump set to this kind of music with his sweet grandkids and a glass of Diet Coke right by his side. You might not think so, but this is the kind of thing that works. And the video is, here's the music.
There'll be days like this when there's no one complaining.
Okay. And it's Trump, the man who was found guilty of sexually assaulting a woman and who bragged about grabbing women by the genitals, hugging grandchildren. Like, Ali, congratulations. You're officially endorsing an actual predator. Like, you know what? I think Ali actually deserves... Do I have the... Yeah, she does. Yeah, here we go. Thank you, Ali. Props to you. This, if you can't tell, April, this stuff makes me very angry. It just makes me very angry.
Well, the hypocrisy is so loud. They have no shame. Like, do they not hear themselves? I guess that they don't. But it's just... It's the same thing with, like, I mean, it is Pride Month. you see a lot of people quoting Genesis, the creation story right now, male and female, as a way to condemn trans identities. But they stop there. They don't keep it going because the Bible also only mentions night and day, and yet sunrises exist. And you don't see a lot of people calling a sunset an abomination.
I'm with you. It's infuriating. Okay, we're ranting enough. Let's move on to the next post I want to get to, and then we can wrap it up. But let's only do 2 today because we had all the other Trump posts that we shared. I think this one just wins automatically. Okay, talk about hypocrisy and just dualistic approaches. Our boy Franklin Graham. Yeah.
Franklin Graham.
The son of Billy Graham. Now listen, I do try my best not to say things that are below the belt, and I try and keep family out of situations. I don't like bringing up kids or things like that. But I really believe that if Billy Graham was still alive, he would be mortified at the behavior of his son Franklin Graham. I really do. I think he would be absolutely mortified. I'm not saying Billy was perfect, but my gosh, it's unreal to see how far down the Trump sycophant rabbit hole Franklin Graham has gone.
And let's not forget too, Billy Graham, one of his more famous quotes is he said, "It would disturb me," this is a quote, "it would disturb me if there was a wedding between the religious fundamentalists and the political right. The hard right has no interest in religion except to manipulate it."
Literally prophetic. If people exist when they die and Billy can see all this, he's probably losing his mind. I'm just saying. It's crazy. So here's what happened. Donald Trump, convicted felon, 34 counts, posted this on his Truth Social, and it's a picture of a letter from Franklin Graham to Trump. April, do you want to read it in your typical Christian nationalist voice?
Sure. Or in my drawled Franklin Graham voice.
Yeah, let's do that. I like that southern draw.
Dear Mr. President, I just wanted to write to you today and thank you for your courage and for not giving up and throwing in the towel. You had a choice. So much of America is shocked with this outcome and deeply concerned about the implications for our nation. I encourage you to ask God for his help and put your trust in him. King David said in Psalm 23, "Yes, or yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, ... End quote. He ends it there. My prayers are with you, Melania, your children, and the entire family. I stand with you, Mr. President. May God guide and direct your every step. Sincerely, your friend, Franklin Graham."
It's blasphemy. Like this is watching Franklin use scripture in this way. What other word can you use?
I also had sent you a screenshot of me trolling Franklin Graham.
Yes, I had that. Should I pull it up?
Because I just to bring some levity, I felt really proud of this one.
Great minds think alike, because I tweeted the same thing, not knowing that you already said it. So it's perfect.
I think a lot of people. So the day of the conviction, so while the jury was deliberating, Franklin Graham tweeted, "Today is day 2 of jury deliberations in the New York trial of former President Donald Trump. Pray that God will give members of the jury wisdom and insight to know truth." And I just quote tweeted it and I said, "Praise God. He answered your prayer. #guilty."
Well, to be clear, if Trump was found innocent, Franklin's tweet would have been, "Praise God for the truth to come out," right? Because in Franklin's mind, the game's already set and match. If he's not innocent, it's going to be rigged. If he's innocent, it's God's will. So it's not actually about God's will, obviously. It's about weaponizing that language to whatever outcome benefits Franklin Graham and his political views.
Right. If Trump would have been innocent, it would have been God's will and God's divine intervention. But since he was convicted, Satan won that one and Satan took over.
Right. Like, is God all powerful or not in this worldview? Is God sovereign, meaning does God rule over and appoint leaders, or does he not? Now, some people I've heard say, yes, he appoints every leader, a leader of essentially flourishing or of judgment, and Biden's a leader of judgment. But even then, you have to submit to it. It's God's will. Like, there is this. Yeah. So the term is called determinism, It's the idea that God has already set everything in motion and that whatever happens or whatever comes to pass has been decreed by God to come to pass. So
predestination.
It's all part of God's plan. But of course, most people who believe that don't actually live like it, which is why they fight against, in their mind, abortion, right? Because we have to stop this act, even though every abortion that happens has been decreed by God to happen. Every queer marriage that has happened has been decreed by God to happen. So they don't actually believe it. They pretend that they do, and then when it's their side of things or it's their legal precedent that becomes law, or whenever it's their precedent, then it's God's sovereign decree, and we have to submit to it. So it's just kind of a weaponized way of thinking about things, where God is always on their side and never on the side of anything that would come across or against their worldview.
Yeah, fun times.
Fun times. Well, do we agree? I mean, do we need to really vote? Can we just say this Franklin Graham one is the post of the week? Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, let's go with that.
All right,
Good
cool.
job, Franklin.
Congrats, Franklin. Yeah, you did it. April, I know every time we do this, we're like, it will be a short show, 45 minutes. Now it's an hour and a half.
Well, woohoo.
We covered a lot, though.
We're used to it now at this point.
I know. Honestly,
there's just so many things, and we didn't even get to everything that we were going to. And you didn't read your new, the next few pages of Sean Foyt's kids' book.
Oh, we have to. Hold on, I have it here. Good point. Thank you for reminding me. I have it right here.
The Glory Bus.
Yeah, so friends, if you don't know, we are in the middle of a very intense book called The Kingdom to the Capital Adventures of the Glory Bus, written by Sean Foyt. Sean Foyt is a worship leader who started protesting the pandemic by having mass worship gatherings, and now he's a full-on Christian nationalist. He wrote a kid's book about his tour around the U.S. to all 50 capitals to pray over them. And this is what it's called. It's called the Glory Bus. Okay, I'm a little hard to see here, but that's what it is.
Beautiful
and
little bus.
We're on part 2. Now we left off on a real cliffhanger.
He got a flat tire, right?
Oh, you're gonna spoil it? Yeah, you're right. Yes,
No, that
we
was
left
in the
off
last
here.
one.
What an amazing trip! I'm trying to get in the camera. Watch out! Oh no, I got a flat tire. That's
dun,
serious.
dun.
Yeah. So let's continue on a few pages, and we'll end off on a happy note. All right. Next page, no resolution. It just says, praise the Lord. We had just made it to Montana. The new friends we met there were so kind to me. They rolled me into a rodeo ring so I could rest and get some new tires. Okay. Of course, we had to worship at the rodeo. Yeehaw! Thank the Lord, and let's keep going. And here's the picture. Okay, now this person right here, that's Sean Foyt. So this is Sean Foyt worshiping with his bus.
With his Glory Bus.
We get to worship Jesus everywhere we go. Past Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, through Salt Lake City, Utah, and Carson City, Nevada. We even got to worship on the Hoover Dam. Seeing all that water in the desert reminded me of a Bible verse. I am doing something new. Now you will grow like a new plant. I will even make a road in the desert, and rivers will flow through the dry land. Isaiah 43:19. And there is our Glory Bus right there. Okay?
Wow.
I know. This is, wow. Riveting. Did you know that God can do impossible things? When we put our trust in him, we will see him do amazing things. We've got to keep going. We have a lot of ground to cover if we're going to make it to the nation's capital. And in the back, it's the bus, and it says, on the back here, it says revival or bust. That's on the back of the, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's leave off on a real cliffhanger. The deserts of the Southwest were scorching hot, but that didn't slow us down. We arrived in Texas only to find out something totally unexpected. They wanted us to worship inside the Capitol instead of outside on the steps.
Oh my gosh, it's a miracle.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. We'll find out more what happens. How do you get a bus inside the Capitol? We're going to find out, I guess, on the next installment of what's it called again? The Glory Bus. Right, the Glory Bus. So,
wow.
Thank you for the reminder, April. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Friends, it was so good. These recaps I live for them. They are so much fun. We can get all the current event stuff out of the way. And yes, we know that Carl Lentz has a podcast. We know. We're going to cover it next week. Okay, trust me. Between April and I, we see all. Very little gets past our net.
But if something does get past us, you can email us some news tips or stories.
Yes, news@thenewevangelicals.com.
Yes.
Cool. I should give you access to that inbox too. That way you can see it as well, April. It could be good. So,
Cool.
all right, that's all we got, friends. Thanks for being here. If you like the channel, please subscribe. If you like the podcast, please subscribe. Leave a comment. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah.
Talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
What's that song? I am the
I'm
chosen.
standing
yeah.
with the chosen
Chosen
one.
one. Do, 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 do.